Max Verstappen just said something that should terrify every Red Bull fan heading into Monza. When asked about his team's chances at the Italian Grand Prix, the four-time world champion admitted, "Good question. I don't even know myself." But here's what makes this confession even more alarming. Why did Verstappen describe his podium finish at Zandvoort as nothing more than being nice? What does he know about Red Bull's car that the rest of us are missing? And why is he already bracing fans for another painful Monza weekend, just like the disaster that unfolded 12 months ago? The answers to these questions reveal a Red Bull team that's fighting demons they still don't fully understand, and a championship window that might be closing faster than anyone realizes. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth about Zandvoort. Yes, Verstappen finished second. Yes, it ended a 4-race podium drought. But listen to how he actually describes that performance. "I think the pace in the race wasn't anything particularly strong, so there's still a few things that we need to understand a bit better. Why in the race it didn't really go to plan. This wasn't a celebration of Red Bull's return to form. It was a damage report from someone who knows his car better than anyone." Verstappen moved into second only because Lando Norris retired late in the race. Without that mechanical failure, we're talking about a 5th consecutive race off the podium for the man who dominated 2023. But the real concern isn't just the results, it's the pattern that's emerging. According to Verstappen's own admission, Red Bull has been struggling with the same fundamental issue for 2 seasons running. Unfortunately, this car is sometimes a bit difficult to understand. This isn't a minor setup problem. This is a team that built championship-winning machinery and somehow lost the plot on how to make it work consistently. The evidence is in their weekend-to-weekend volatility. At Zandvoort, Verstappen went from predicting it would be hard to be in the top 5 after Friday practice to qualifying 3rd and finishing 2nd. That's not a team finding speed, that's a team guessing their way to competitiveness. Now, you might think Red Bull's overnight improvements show their engineering brilliance. After all, they've made these dramatic Friday to Saturday leaps multiple times recently. Surely that proves they can solve their problems when it matters. Here's where the story gets more complex. According to Verstappen, these dramatic improvements aren't planned. It's not that we do it on purpose. Think about what that means. The team that dominated Formula One for over a year is now admitting they can't predict their own car's behavior from one day to the next. This becomes even more revealing when you consider what Verstappen said about their approach. I just hope that this weekend will be a bit more straightforward. But I cannot guarantee you that right now. A 4-time world champion shouldn't have to hope for a straightforward weekend. He should know his car well enough to predict it. The timing of these admissions is crucial. We're not talking about early season growing pains or mid-season development struggles. These are comments made heading into one of the most important races of the season, at a track where Red Bull's weaknesses were brutally exposed just 12 months ago. This is where Verstappen's comments about last year's Monza become truly significant. He didn't just mention it was tough. He painted a picture of complete helplessness. Last year here was very tough for us. The car was really not performing where we wanted it to be. The numbers from that weekend tell the full story. Verstappen and Sergio Perez were 3/4 of a second off the pace in qualifying and could only manage 6th and 8th on race day. For context, that's the kind of gap that usually separates championship contenders from midfield runners. But here's what makes this year's situation potentially worse. Red Bull is coming to Monza with the same fundamental car balance issues that plagued them throughout 2024. When Verstappen says, "I just hope everything is a bit more balanced this weekend," He's essentially admitting they haven't solved the core problems that made last year's Monza weekend such a disaster. The most telling detail comes from his assessment of what they need, understanding why in the race it didn't really go to plan. This suggests Red Bull's issues run deeper than setup or strategy. They're struggling to understand why their car behaves the way it does during the most important part of the weekend, the race itself. The implications of these revelations extend far beyond one weekend in Italy. We're witnessing a championship-winning team that's lost confidence in its own machinery. When your lead driver is saying, "I don't even know myself about the car's potential," that's not just honesty, that's a cry for help. Consider the broader context. Red Bull's 4-race podium drought wasn't just bad luck. It was a systematic inability to extract performance when it mattered. Even their Zandvoort recovery came with caveats that suggest the underlying problems remain unsolved. The upcoming races will test Red Bull in different ways. Monza's low downforce requirements are completely different from Zandvoort's high downforce setup. According to Verstappen, this makes prediction impossible. This is a completely different track, low downforce, completely different corners as well. I guess we'll find out tomorrow. That uncertainty becomes even more problematic when you consider that Red Bull's competitors aren't dealing with the same fundamental car balance issues. McLaren has been consistently fast across different track types. Ferrari has shown strong pace on their home circuits. Red Bull, meanwhile, is still playing guessing games with their own setup. The championship implications are clear. Every weekend of uncertainty is a weekend of potential points lost. With multiple teams capable of winning races, Red Bull can't afford to show up to circuits hoping for the best. As we head into this weekend's action, several critical questions remain unanswered. First, can Red Bull avoid repeating last year's Monza disaster, or will we see another weekend where they're 3/4 of a second off the pace? Second, if Verstappen admits he doesn't understand his own car's potential, how can Red Bull make the strategic decisions needed to maximize their championship chances? Most importantly, how long can a team remain competitive when their lead driver describes podium finishes as merely nice and openly questions whether they'll be straightforward weekend to weekend? The evidence suggests we're watching a team in transition, not from good to better, but from dominant to uncertain. This weekend at Monza won't just determine Red Bull's immediate prospects. It could define whether they can solve their car balance puzzle before their championship window closes completely. Keep watching for the key indicators. Can Red Bull show consistent pace across both practice sessions? Will Verstappen's predictions about the car's potential prove accurate? And most tellingly, will we see another dramatic overnight transformation that proves their success is based more on hope than understanding? The Temple of Speed is about to deliver some brutal truths about Red Bull's 2024 campaign. Based on Verstappen's own words, even he doesn't know if they're ready for what's coming.